Hi guys, I am excited to have Lauryn Simas on the show today, where we talk about being bold, walking in the calling that God placed on our life with authority. Lauryn is an interior designer. She homeschools. Besides being an amazing creative, we actually partnered together to do our first women's retreat called Women Who Flourish. We're going to talk about all the things about women feeling loneliness and wanting community. And that is one of the reasons we did Women Who Flourish. Welcome, everyone. My name is Annie Gardner with the Worthy Podcast, where we have conversations worth having and we talk about women and the calling on their life and walking boldly in it. And because of that, I was really excited to invite my friend Lauryn Simas on the podcast. We actually just did something together that we'll talk about in a little bit, but welcome.
Thanks. It's Lauryn Simas.
Oh, sorry, Court. Simas. Your whole name is interesting.
I know.
Because it's Lauryn Simas.
I know.
And then it matters because you're an interior designer and it's part of your brand. And I feel very strongly about people and their brands. Okay, so Lauryn, your background is in interior design.
Yes.
And in being a creative.
Yes.
And so how did you get into that?
Well, I knew since I was 6 years old that I wanted to do it. I was rearranging furniture in my room. My parents would be like, "We'll help you later." And I'd close the door and just use my leg muscles to push it around and rearrange. And
That is so funny.
I then had little fictitious families that I would create and just put in a little like journal of like what each family needed for their house. And then from there, my parents noticed it. So they're like, "We'll get you like a CD-ROM of our first interior design architecture where you could build houses."
Yeah.
And so that was probably when I was like 10 or something. And then it just kept going from there on, where my parents just kept stewarding that gift that they saw in me. And then in school, I just changed to a school that had drafting class and wood shop and all that.
Like
And
in high school?
Yeah, in high school.
Oh.
So I went from a private that didn't have as much to
Yeah.
a public, just to be able to have a draftsman teach me all that. And then I did an internship with architecture firm and did that for them.
All the things.
Yeah.
That's amazing that like your play was interior design.
Yeah.
Like that's how you played. And then that your parents took note of it and then
For sure.
fostered that.
I thank them every day, and it just has made me hone in on looking for what my kids' giftings are, to be able to just encourage them along the way.
Yeah.
If that's something they want to do, because as a kid, I feel like you will sit there and say, "Oh, I really want to do this." And it might be 5 different things. But as the mother, I feel like God gives you that eye to be able to see what it is that they're gifted at.
When did you start like hearing from God when you were doing all the creative things? Because I've heard a lot of people say that they encounter God through being creative. Like when I'm in the kitchen and I'm like cooking or making sourdough bread, I love just putting on worship music, and it's not silent with just worship music, and then making the bread and encountering God. So
Yeah.
when you are with a client or when you're doing interior design, like how does that process work for you?
I feel like when I hear from the client, you do your basic like interior design questionnaire that I have just to get a feel, if I don't know the person, of kind of their likes, dislikes, what their intentions are for their space, whether it be residential or commercial. But then it goes further where I ask the Lord. I set aside time to just encounter him and ask, like, what do you want for the space that they need, that they may not know, or that he just wants in the space, to either encounter his presence or whatever it might be, to just ask in advance, like what colors, what shapes, what piece of furniture, what do you want there, Lord?
Yeah. I'm gonna like when I'm promoting this or when we talk about it on my social, I'm gonna have to show what you create. Like Lauryn and I just did a women's retreat, and I was telling someone recently about it, and they're like, "Oh, you can hire a florist to do florals." And in my head, I'm like, "There is no way Loren would hire somebody else, because that is how you connect with God. But you can see it in how beautiful, like she put flowers and fruit, and I would have never have thought of that, and I'm still in awe of that because it's art. That was art, and it was so beautiful, and so." How does, walk me through how your brain works with that?
Yeah. Well, I think with the floral, even interior design, it matters to me, even when it goes past interior design. It's architecture, then interior design, and then it's even landscape design, and then flowers inside the space. Like it all matters because it's all a part of the beauty of God, of like the atmosphere looking a certain way. And it's even down to like the details of maybe what napkin, or when it comes to Women Who Flourish, what like branding for the menu design and everything.
Yeah.
I feel like everything needs to be cohesive and just beautiful the way God sees it, and or at least being a vessel for him of like what he shows me beforehand of like, oh, I see it like this, and this. And I think that when it came to that day, it was just back to the fruits of the spirit that we were talking about, and then just other parts of women of just being fruit and blooming and like multiplying and all that. I think that's where that started. And then it was like, okay, let's add flowers to it. And I think the flowers and event design happens to be like at a young age. Again, my grandma was a florist and she wasn't an event designer. And so at the age of like 10 or younger, I was just going to different events with her, helping do all the little details, like getting her little bag out of like scissors and tape and everything and putting it all together and learning from her. And so I feel like that just is naturally there, where it just comes, where it's like, oh, they all need, it needs to be cohesive and it needs to all look good and be together. So
because I have never met anyone. It's just so beautiful. So you talked about Women Who Flourish. So we're going to go into that now.
Okay.
When I was at your house, so I'm going to backtrack a lot now. I met Loren because when I joined the church that we go to, you happened to be the person to give me my connect with God, and you gave me a prophetic word. And I remember just recently I sent it to you because I went and I looked up that prophetic word, and it was so timely for the season that I was in. And I had not experienced people giving me any prophetic words until I met you. I think that was the first prophetic word I had ever received. I didn't know what the prophetic was. I had no idea. I was a new baby. Yes. And so I was like, oh, this is so interesting, because I remember, I think I recorded it and I told you, I was like, it's as if you know me and you've been following me all of these years, because no one would have known that. But that's what the prophetic is. You hear from the Lord and then you just speak. And sometimes you're like, well, I'm going to miss it or not.
Yeah.
And I always get so excited when it's encouraging that the Lord, he speaks to us.
Yeah.
And then I joined one of your classes called Creative Freedom. Okay. And I always laugh because in this class, I thought I was doing a creative class, because I love
a workshop
to learn new things, flowers, a workshop. And then I get to the class and women are being freed and they're crying. And I'm like, I do not cry in public. I don't want anything to do with this. And I think I said, if I would have known that I was going to be crying all the time, I wouldn't have signed up for this. But it was it was to get free. And so backtrack to that. Like how did that class come about? Because it's so unique.
So I was bedridden for a year. And in that season, it was super frustrating that I couldn't be with my children, and we had to hire a nanny so my husband could go back to work. And I was just like at the lowest low, like depression, everything, but still seeking the Lord and being like, I need help. I need out of this. Like,
Yeah.
we had black mold in our house and it just like crushed me. And in that moment, I was just journaling with the Lord, and I would just keep journals over everything that I also feel like he was pruning in me in that season
Yeah.
and just wanting to work through. And then we had first started at our church, the first ever groups. And before the groups, it was more like our first group was about freedom. And it was kind of the ones that were over the connect part and then also starting to lead into groups. And at that point, they were all just like, you should start a group. And I'm like, what? I'm not prepared for this.
Yeah.
I was coming out of the bedridden state. And the Lord's like, well, you have everything you need in your journal. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, every topic is there. So it was 7 topics for the 7 weeks. And
Wow.
he, I also just am passionate about freedom and deliverance.
Yeah.
So I'm always reading books about freedom, deliverance, inner healing, like intercession, like all the things.
If someone has no idea what we're talking about, what does that mean?
Okay, so for freedom, just we all have things from our past that might be traumas or other things that have come up generationally or just occurrences that happen that we need to be set free from. And same with deliverance, where I feel like it's just deeper, where you need to get set free and delivered from demons and other things that open doors that you've like unknowingly in sin or something opened doors, and that's allowed the enemy to come in. And through that, I was just very passionate because there's so much from my generation that I didn't know. And once it started getting revealed, it was an epiphany and a revelation from the Lord of like, wow, this is why I've struggled with all these different things and I need to be set free from it. And that was just breaking off that generational curse that my grandfather was the highest ranking in Freemasonry. And I had been in 22 car accidents, which is just not normal. And I was just like, yeah, this doesn't feel normal. I never got seriously hurt. The Lord protected me. But then my roommate was like, this is not normal. You need to go see a deliverance counselor. So I did. And that's when she went and used the prophetic and heard from the Lord that it was Freemasonry. I was like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
I then was like, that's not in our family. I don't know. I need to like leave, process this with the Lord and come back. And that's when I asked my aunt and my mom, and they're like, yeah, casually their grandpa was just like the highest ranking, like no big deal. I'm like, this is seen as like a positive thing. They were unknowing of what actually happens behind closed doors. And it was more like this society thing of like, oh, they're good. They give to Scottish Rite Church, hospitals, like all these things. And so, I think that was the start of much more once I got saved of getting deliverance and freedom, where I just became passionate about it because I just wanted to be pruned to be more like Jesus and overcome these things that I had or generationally hadn't purposely partnered with that had been there. So,
That's so good that you touched on that, because I know when we talked about doing the Women Who Flourish, we talked about how there's all of these retreats or classes or workshops where they have crystals and sound baths and like the sage and stuff, and they're sold out. And there's all these women that go to that and they just like want to manifest things and, all this language. And they open the door to witchcraft, but they don't know it because it is pretty and iridescent and there's crystals, but that's another form of witchcraft. And so if you don't know that, it's like, hey, the devil likes to use beautiful things to pretend that you're like seeking peace. But if you're not actually seeking the Lord, it's the opposite. You're seeking like help from the devil.
the counterfeit,
It's the counterfeit. And people don't, like, women don't know that. And I try really hard to say it in a loving way, but if you're not worshiping and seeking the Lord and you're seeking a counterfeit, it's witchcraft. It is what it is. And so I know that's why we were passionate about doing like the opposite, Women Who Flourish, where we create a space where Holy Spirit is there and there is beauty, just like the counterfeit is, crystals and all, the things. Like we created an environment where we invited the Lord into it. And it was really cool because women were walking into it and they immediately encountered the presence of God.
Yes.
So how did you, because we partnered, but how did the Lord give you that vision?
I think over the last few years, it's been a long waiting for this to happen of just trusting the Lord and the timing of when it's right. But I know that since when I first got saved, it was like this class that they had at a church that my husband and I had just gone to, and it was about your identity of like, what is your calling and purpose? And it was to set women free and be all that they're called to be. And basically the Isaiah 61 too. And just using the creativity to do that. So I feel like that is where the stirring had started. But then you get on going through life and you're like, okay, a mother, all these other things. And so that was just kind of laying there waiting to be like picked up of when the timing was right.
Yeah.
And so I think I just kept praying and asking the Lord, like, when should we do this? And I knew it would take the right group of women that actually were on board to pull it off, because it wasn't a small effect. Like, it was just like we all needed to come together to do it. And so, I think I feel like it was the one time when we were at my house having that dinner party that it was just like, okay, at that point, either you had brought it up or I brought it up. I can't remember.
Yeah.
One of us brought it up first and we were like, oh, let's do retreats together.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Lord, that must be the timing. Like, you're bringing it up. And I think 6 months prior to that, I had already started asking different women. And he was just like, see if they're even interested, because he brought them to mind. And so I was just like asking and waiting for him to say, this is the time.
Yeah. What had happened was the Lord spoke to me last year and said, start a podcast and do women's retreats. And I think I told 2 people, and it is a lot of work. I mean, it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so people are like, that sounds like the feeling of it sounds great, right? But the actual doing of it, I mean, you have to steward your encounters, and then you have to steward the opposition of when the enemy tries to distract you from it.
Yeah.
And so I started doing the podcast, and I had this vision of doing a retreat, and I submitted it to people I had invited to pray over it. And they said, well, like, I wanted to go to Guatemala and take 10 women
to do
and
international,
just go all out. And they're like, well, you're going to take them to a third world country right away. And they're like, maybe downsize it. So in that praying into it, I was doing nothing. I was like, Lord, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so I started doing research, and then I went to your house and we started talking about it. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then you called me and you said, hey, do you want to partner? And I was like, Lord, do you want me to partner? And because immediately I was excited, because I knew that whatever you did, it would be beautiful, where I will do the work. And I mean, I love beautiful things, but the details are, you bring in like the details of it. And the Lord's like, yes, partner, because you have been sitting on this and not doing anything with it. And I'm like, okay, let's partner, because when the Lord gives me something, it's not about me. Like, I don't want to do it because, Annie had this vision. It's like, no, the Lord, there's women that need community and need to be stewarded. And so I'm going to go out. I'm going to go bat for those women.
Yeah.
And so we saw that when we had the retreat, the common theme was women want and need community.
Yes.
And something that I have struggled with has been loneliness or feeling alone. And I like to tell on myself. I like to tell on the enemy. Is it depression? Is it my hormones? Or is it, why am I struggling with feeling alone so much because John travels. And recently, I didn't want to burden him with, hey, I feel alone again. Like it's what the enemy likes to manipulate my thoughts with. So I have to make sure I hold my thoughts captive. And I told him, after not wanting to burden him, he's like, well, it's your mental health. Like, you should talk about it. And then I realized, oh, wait, it is hormonal. It is like, I'm about to get my period. Your emotions start messing with you, and the enemy's like, oh, this is perfect. She feels weak. And then the enemy will, if you let the enemy like run with your thoughts, you're like, I live here by myself. I have no friends.
Start lying about the
all of these
isolation and
lies.
everything.
Yes. And then when I tell someone or I talk about it, it's like another woman has maybe 4 kids around her. She's definitely not by herself. And she struggles with loneliness because she feels alone as a mom with these kids. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm literally alone. So I thought I was the only one who struggled with loneliness, but moms are feeling alone. And I was like, this is so sad. Like, if we just talked about it more, I bet you, and they said, we just want community.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
They just want to feel seen and as their like own individual selves, because as a mother, yes, that is your calling from the Lord, like your first calling as wife and then mother. But then I feel like you can get lost in it.
Yeah.
And that was the part of me, like wanting to start this is for like knowing my gifts and talents and wanting to use them. And yes, I'm first a wife and then a mother and then a homeschool teacher, but I did not want to also lose my creative giftings that I knew were from the Lord too. And I feel like that was the part where I needed to invest and steward in that and have my career and do that with the Lord. But at the same time, there's other women that don't even think they have permission to even find a small crack, whether it's making sourdough bread or going out and having a garden, anything when they're a stay-at-home mom. And then, the other mothers, when they have kids in school, they can make time for themselves to work out or do something during that time that they're at school. And I just think that women need to use their creativity.
How would you encourage a woman to find that permission?
Yeah, I feel like that's part of our group is like just encouraging them to get out there and remember, seek the Lord on this. What is he saying? Where can you bring that childlike part of you back out of the things that you are passionate about or that the Lord wants to teach you in this season or wants to call back out to use as forms of therapy for yourself with him in the creativity. And it can look different in whatever way. I mean, the way you connect with the Lord, but then also creativity, because we're all innately creative by the creator,
How do you, what does it look like practically when you connect with God?
For me, I connect with God in nature and then in solitude. So I need my quiet time in the morning where I don't hear anything else, then everything's blocked out, and just processing stuff with him and asking him questions or praying, seeking him and going through the word. But then in gardening and just being out in nature, like hiking, I feel like that is where I just see his beauty and just like how awestruck I'm left with the simple things that people can be so busy to pass by. And for me, it's like maybe the bird or looking for the bird that's passing by or seeing that there's a bee or a butterfly or just even in the sunset and the sunrise, just capturing that every day is completely different from him that we get to experience and see.
How do you steward your marriage while you're being a mom and then walking in your calling boldly? Because, people see a highlight reel and they think like, wow, she's so lucky because her husband lets her do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not the reality of it. I mean, we do have husbands that empower us to walk in our calling. but that we steward our marriages. You have to steward your marriage.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
I think it's a balance. I don't think anybody is succeeding at all the things. Like we aren't meant to multitask, and so something is falling through the cracks somewhere. And if women aren't honest about that, they should be, because it's just, that's the truth.
Yes.
But I feel like, what is God saying to do it right there in that moment? And obviously, there are times where maybe I'm like, oh, I haven't been, focused on my husband as much, or I've been neglecting this part, like the laundry or something. I've let that pile up. I think every point, it's just like always asking the Lord, what do I need to steward with my time at this point in time? Because it is a lot to manage. And I think just for us, we set aside time for date nights and make sure that's like booked and scheduled, so you still get that alone time without the children, like one-on-one. To, vision cast or just pray or just have fun. And then with being a mother and a homeschool teacher and having a career and having a team of women that work with me, like all the things, I have kind of put that boundary of honoring my children first and being a teacher, where if projects get to the busy point, there's grace that I homeschool year round, where I will pick up those calls. But for the most part, most of my clients know you won't be hearing from me until after the afternoon. And I work more at night of like responding to emails or getting back. But if it's like that contractor needs me at 7 a.m., right when the job is busy for those few months that it tends to happen, then I'm like there, and the kids are coming with me, and we homeschool at a different time. But honoring my kids, because I've made that mistake before too, where I was just working at our church, serving, volunteering, but also had my career, a paid client, and then a homeschool teacher, and then a wife. And I got that out of balance. And it was just like, okay, take it back, where I only have this many hours to serve. I only have this much to do, and I'm being stretched thin. And my husband had to call me out on that, of like, you're not honoring like our family unit first, and your children and us. And I was like, I repent for that. Like, yes, I'm not. And so I think it's just a balance and asking the Lord. So as far as interior design, that comes lower on, even though it's a career, like I honor my paid client, but at the same time, I have to ask the Lord, you know what the future holds. So you tell me, what clients do I take at this time or not? Like, you know, if this is going to be a year-long project, a year and a half, or just a simple consultation that's a few weeks or something like that. And so I always just ask the Lord, I'm like, in this season, should I do it? Should I not? And so right now, in this last year, I haven't been taking on clients because I've been working on something else behind the scenes. So yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Especially, you said that your husband called you out. And John will call me out too. And when he does, he said this the other day. He's like, well, I know that you're a little tender right now. So I was trying to say it, and then I just said it. And he goes, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. He goes, but I was trying to be tender. But because he's learned that, you know, some days I'm a lot more sensitive than other days. And the fact that he even saw that, I was like, wow, that's amazing. But he knows that he can call me out because he can't just be like, yes, run, or yes, do this, or, you know, like, he's not my yes person. He can empower me, but then he can call me higher and call me out, like, maybe your attitude's kind of, you know. And so I think that's beautiful that you said that your husband does that.
Yeah. And he obviously supports me to do the creative things, but I also ask him. Like, I'm an external processor, so I'm like, let's process this through and like flesh it out, like for the next 6 months or a year of what we can actually hold space for and do. And with Women Who Flourish, it was asking him in advance. Like, I feel like that, like, there's this stirring that he's asking, it's about to be time. The Lord wants me to do this. What do you think? And he was like, I 100% support it. I feel it is a ministry. I feel women are needing that encouragement and to to just, like, if you and I don't show up, these women aren't receiving what they need. And that is what my husband felt too, of like knowing women are like hiding in the trenches, like of motherhood and just life of the isolation, and the enemy is coming for them, and they need to be encouraged and wooed of his beauty and his, you know, the giftings of encourage, you know, so.
Why do you think that so many of us women hide in the trenches?
Well, number one, maybe they don't want to admit it, but then number two, I feel like it's just easier. Like if you're at home and doing the things, you've got to get those things done. So maybe I feel like they might not be even, I think some of them don't even know that they're even, it's okay to dream or want things for themselves. There's those women, and then there's the other women that want it and they maybe don't speak about it, and they maybe tell their friends but not necessarily their husband, because they are like, well, I'm already, there's like all these things. Maybe I'm getting my hair done, or I've got to do the laundry, and then I'm taking care of the kids and the home, like, you know, all those things that they're already like, where would the time come to be able to do that? And then I think there's the other that want it, but, and they like don't know where that community is or how to
like where would they
find
fit it in?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've had that thought. If I didn't do what the Lord asked me to do, if I wasn't doing these projects, one, I probably would save us some money. And two, it'd probably just be easier to just be home and just do the wife thing and the mom thing without doing what the Lord called me to do. Because I don't sit there and say, Lord, I have nothing to do, give me a project. I just sit there and ask, Lord, what do you want me to do in this season? I know that my kids are older and I'm stewarding them to be adults so that they can hear the Lord and they can be obedient when the Lord says, hey, do this. They do it, but because they've seen us hear from God and do it and know that sometimes we have to pivot a little bit because the Lord said that, and so we're going to spend more time on this. Or mom is doing her women thing, and then eventually they're able to, like, my son's able to articulate, well, my mom is a daughter of God, and so she heard from the Lord to do that, so she's spending time doing that. The narrative isn't, oh, well, mom's just doing something, so she's not spending time with me. No, they know that mom hears from God and is being obedient, so that therefore, when they hear from God, they're going to be obedient. And it's, when you think of it like that, I think that guilt, which is a lie of the enemy, kind of is just, it comes off.
Or if you include them, like my kids, they're like, oh, I'm excited. I want to go pick that out with you or get this. And I'm like, okay, you can be involved, or I'll clean this and that. And there's that sense of empowerment for them because they get to be included and get to be chosen to do it. And again, like if any of my children are interested in it, which some of them are, they like food and they want to think of those things or other things when it's creative. They want to be a part of the creative part too and prepare. So they're like happy to do it.
That's so cool.
So yeah.
Are any of them just like you? Because you have three.
Yeah, I have three. I feel like Cora, my daughter, she's definitely creative, but I see it more in book writing and illustration. But she definitely loves the girly stuff, like the girly girl things. And then I feel like Fulton, he just loves hard work and creating too in a different way, and it's more with his hands. So when it comes to a task, he likes doing that. And then Makai, he thinks outside of the box like me, of taking what may be like this negative thing of a learning disability and having it on the flip side that we just have, that we use the other side of our brain. So he's very similar in how he thinks strategically and all those things. So yeah.
How do you homeschool? Like, I learned so much about women homeschooling. Like, before I moved here, I knew 2 people that homeschooled, and now I know a lot of women who homeschool. So what called you to do that?
Yeah, it was back to when I was being rushed through the school system, I was dyslexic and dyscalculia,
I
and
have dyscalculia
and
too.
I didn't find out till I was 19.
I didn't know until I was in college.
Yeah,
I'm
and I'm
like,
like,
is this
this
why I've
would
been
have been
struggling
nice.
my whole life?
Exactly. And it was like
Yes.
I was still making good grades, but I was frustrated that the moment I learned it, we were having to be rushed on because it's like all about the testing and you just got to learn all this stuff. And not everybody thinks the same way and not everybody learns the same way. We all learn
Right.
differently. And I was just not meant to be put in that box type setting. And while I still succeeded,
Yes.
because I learned how to improvise or have my parents help or different things, it wasn't until college that being in a very artistic college, getting my interior design degree, that almost every single person there has a learning difficulty. And so because of that, they allowed, when it came to the math or the reading and the extra stuff that we had to do for schooling, that we could have extended time to take the test or have a completely quiet room to be able to not, like read the question over and over again until we processed it. And I think that was like, I felt so seen of, this is what I needed all along, because I was going to tutors after school and extra school work literally until dinner time and then doing my homework and stuff. And it was just like, it came easy for my sisters. And I'm like, man, this is so difficult that it's like, I'm trying and it just isn't clicking.
Right.
And then obviously when I got off into college in the real world, I only needed those certain skills for certain parts. And that's like your basic level of math and stuff like that. So I think that put something in me that was just like, if I had a kid like that, I would want to homeschool. And I want the beauty of being able to relearn with the kids and teach them. And that was another thing when I was little. I was playing teacher all the time.
Yeah.
And I never thought that I could have both. And the Lord showed me, you can do interior design and teach. And I just did not even think that. And it would be in homeschooling. So I'm getting to walk out both those giftings of interior design and teaching. And I think then when I had my child, we adopted our foster child, and seeing all his sensory issues and things like that, it was even more like, we're still doing this. And thankfully my husband was on board. Not all women get that support from their husbands, because it's like this unknown place, and they're like, how are we going to know that our children are going to learn or that you're capable if you potentially don't have a degree? And and then in Texas there's like really no accountability like other states of making sure that you are doing your stuff. And because we don't have to go take testing with the standardized testing in like charter schools or anything like that, and we don't get funding. But I think that that's where a lot of women kind of have a hard time with it, because you have to be a self-starter and you have to like hold yourself accountable and show up for your children and show up for them. And if you see issues happening, you need to get outside help. And then we have in Texas, we have all these beautiful things of charter or co-ops and other places where they can go and get taught by other teachers and have that kind of like public school aspect, private school aspect, where you get the locker and you get the different teachers and different periods, and then prom and all that and sports, but you still ultimately have your mother as the teacher in the end. And I then had the blessing of living with my aunt while I was going to school for 3 years, and she homeschooled my three cousins. They all graduated early by 16. Well, almost all of them. I think it was just two. And they each learned differently. One just solely wanted to learn online using videos. The other was like, I need my mom. Like, I really need that processing. And then the other went to a co-op. And so seeing that firsthand was like, okay, this isn't weird. This isn't unknown. I can do this. And then when you first start out, you're learning how you teach and you're learning how your kid learns. So you're just trying to mold together to figure out what works. And every few months, it's just like looking at it, like what is or isn't working. And then I think Sorry. And then I feel like also it is just working with them. So like seeing my son had a learning um, issue that he needed to have solved. We are like, let's go to these extra places, tutoring, and do whatever we can to help him succeed. And so, yeah, that's like the long way about
That's so awesome. Yeah. I haven't met anyone that knew what dyscalculia was. I feel so seen right now at 41. Right? When I was in college, I really wanted to do like marketing business, but you have to do calculus.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're like,
but no there's thanks. No way that I had tutors just to do like the basic math. Mm-hmm. And I had to retake a class at ASU, a math class. And the professor or like the two people, they were testing me and they're like, oh, you have dyscalculia. And I'm like, what is that? And they described it. And I just see flashbacks of my entire childhood and in high school because my dad is brilliant when it comes to math. And he came from the United States when he was 15. And he was an amazing soccer player. And he did all honors, calculus, and math. And then I'm the firstborn. And so then there was me. Yeah. And he like could not figure out what was wrong with me because I would do the work, but all the numbers were just all over the place. And my teachers would say, you are doing the work correctly, but then you always mix the numbers. And well, I have dyscalculia. And so now even with my husband, he's so smart and he'll speak faster. We'll do budgets and with numbers. And I have to say, okay, we have to slow down. Yeah. And can you tell me that number again super slowly? Because I'm like 1, 2, 3, because they're just like a puzzle in my head. And I guess because I'm older, back then, like people didn't know. Yeah. And so when I was watching my son grow up, I was like, oh, Lord, is he going to struggle? And he doesn't. He's more like his dad and my dad when it comes to math and having that engineer mind, where I'm more of a free spirit and just very I was a communications PR, so my creativity came differently. But I had no idea like that was even a thing. And I think how many moms and women probably believed lies and didn't know like, oh, your brain is just different. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. You're just your struggle is different and your gifting is different, you know? Yeah. And it's great to be in a group of women where everyone has a different gifting. Yeah. Because we're not all created equal. We're just different, you know, beautifully and different. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about Women Who Flourish and where you see that going and why.
Yeah. So I know you and I dream big of wanting to have these mini retreats and then eventually get to a larger retreat where it's a 3 to 4 day thing that they can come and get refreshed and recharged to go back and pour into motherhood or their lives. And we want to take it internationally one day where we just travel to all these different locations because we all want to go to like fun, special places and just have retreats there too. Yeah.
When do you see the next one happening? Like the next mini one? Like if someone's listening to this and they saw like what we were posting.
Yeah, I feel like it's in the spring and fall that we would tend to have that. And so potentially before Christmas, the holiday rush, like right around there, having another one, and for sure in the spring.
Awesome. Yeah. And you think it'll be local?
Yeah, I feel like the first ones we're just learning how to work together and just do that. And then eventually we'll take it to other states and then eventually international.
When you hear from God on who he highlights for you or how he highlights, what do you do with that?
I steward it of like asking him like, okay, I'm going to go reach out and chat with that woman, hear their heart, see if there is an interest. But it's really just like you were saying earlier, of when he asks you to do something, I'm just very quick to obey because I know that that's the timing of when he wants it. And I think there's also parts of where he just wants us to also have free will of he's giving us this dream and like go have fun with it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some things that are unknown and some people maybe want answers for everything. And sometimes it's not like for every single thing. It's just like run because I've given you permission and I've asked you to do this. So I think there's like creative freedom in those areas too.
Yeah. Awesome. If someone wants to go find you on social media, where do they find you?
So I have Lauryn Simas, and then my interior design is Lauryn Simas Designs, and then we have Women Who Flourish.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm going to close with this question, okay? I'm trying to ask everyone the same question.
Okay.
What does it mean to be bold and walk in the calling that God placed on your life with authority?
Yes. So I feel like walking in boldness is knowing your identity in Christ and getting out there and fully walking into what he's asked you to do. That means I guess that that is it. It's just like what you were meant to do and what he's asked you to do, and you're fully walking it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. I love you.
Love you.